official now. Sorry the sun came out. We had this packed and, best laid plans. All right, I want to start with a line from Bob Dylan. He not busy being born is busy dying. Should we hear that again? Okay. He not busy being born is busy dying. And I guess for me this book is just that. It's this continued business of being born, right? In Brain Pickings this morning, Maria Popova, who I adore and love, and perhaps many of you know and love her too, wrote that self-knowledge might be the most difficult of life's rewards, the hardest to earn and the hardest to bear. Yeah, you're nodding. Okay. And I want to add to that to know the self is to be vulnerable. And back to Maria Popova. The honest encounter with that vulnerability is the wellspring of art. Every artist's art is their coping mechanism for the extreme sensitivity to aliveness that we call beauty. All great art, and only honest art can be great, is therefore the work of vulnerability, and all integrity the function of fidelity to one's fragilities. So I just share that with you sort of as an opening to center what I have written here. This is my offering from a tremendous place of vulnerability, and standing here, and I'm about to read it and share some pieces with you, also puts me in a place of tremendous vulnerability. So, before I continue, I want to take a moment just to say Liana's name. Liana Shalik White. She's here with us. And we share in our grief of her loss. And we have a chair. I put a chair there for her so that she wouldn't steal the limelight, because she would. Because that was her MO. All right. So just a moment for Lee. So I wrote a book. Yeah, it's like I wrote a book. And I didn't plan to write a book. It wasn't like I sat down one day, I'm like, here's something I want to write about. No. I know that for some authors that's how it works, right? You may be one of those authors for whom it worked that way, but that wasn't how it worked for me. Hi, you guys. Instead, I guess what I want to say is that my life has always been about the storm. And the writing of Naked was just that. The hurricane that comes of its own imperative. And I went about the business of riding the storm and honoring a deep call that entered, of something that wanted to come through me. And really the process of that journey was one of a deep listening. So you may know that I left teaching. I was a language teacher for over 25 years. I loved my job. And then I got sickened by mold in the workplace. And that brush with toxicity took me out of the classroom and got me into becoming a yoga teacher, taking yoga teacher training. And that was really an attempt to heal my body. And as we say in Anusara, well, let me back up. The process of when we're really deep in our yoga practice, it's really a process of self-knowledge. It's the practice of self-knowledge. And in that, we move more and more towards something that we call the optimal blueprint. And if you're going to move towards your truest nature, you're going to encounter the obstacles along the way, whatever stands in the way, right? And so I went to Mexico in April of 2017, and I'm going to refer to it again when I read a passage from my book, with the goal of healing my body from toxic mold. Like, I got to get this out. I worked with some shamans there. It was pretty wonderful. And I came home and I thought, great, I feel fantastic. I'm healed. And that was the second night that I was home that this book entered me and said, here I am. And it came in, like I said, whole, practically. So I entered the process, the writing process, and like I said, it was really a process of listening, a deep spiritual journey and a practice, actually. So I started writing that night. I got up, and I couldn't stop writing, and I continued for days, and then for months, until all of a sudden it was like, oh, I'm complete. And then, of course, if you're familiar with the process, there's that incredible void and absence of like, oh my God, who am I? But I want to say that healing is a heroic journey. It has all the trappings of a heroic journey. The struggle, the overwhelming odds stacked against you, the enormous obstacles to overcome. But it's an inner journey, and one that's not obvious on the outside. And in that process, we develop those inner resources that we need to develop to win the battle. And there are stories that need to be told, redemptive stories, stories that heal in the telling and that heal in the sharing. And that's what this is. So I'm going to take a risk here, and I'm going to suggest that anybody who is in a woman's body or identifies as a woman raise their hand. Okay, and you can look around and see. Keep the hand up. Keep the hand raised. Or a finger. A finger's great. I like your finger over there. All right, keep your hand up if you, as a woman, have ever received unwanted attention, sexual attention to yourself or your body. Yep, okay. Keep your hand up if you've ever received a touch or a comment about your body that didn't feel right to you or wasn't welcome, or you weren't sure if you really wanted it. Thank you. You can lower your hands now. We share a legacy where true ownership of our bodies and our lives is not a given, but rather needs to be won. Naked shatters taboo to tell a redemptive story at the crossroads where patriarchy and a woman's body collide. While the reader moves quickly into a brutality shared by so many women, but rarely talked about, Naked does not leave her there. It is a story of reclaiming ownership of our bodies, living in the present in a body scarred by millennia of disrespect, coming face to face with our common story, and ultimately finding liberation. Trauma, particularly sexual trauma, is a collective story rooted deeply in ourselves. Naked lets the body speak, narrate, and find its own path to wholeness and delight. Though not always neat and tidy, eventually what is achieved is an authentic journey of integration of mind, body, and soul. As our deeply traumatized world awakens to its need to heal the harmful long-term effects of individual, generational, and collective trauma, Naked offers a template where genuine embodiment is the way and the means for true transformation. Okay. Little trigger warning to the crowd. So before I open and begin, I'm going to start by reading the prologue to Naked, and anybody who's gone online and started reading the book has already read this. But if you haven't, this can be shocking, right? This is but that's what it's about. Partially. Here we go. Actually, maybe let's just take a moment to ground ourselves. I guess I want to offer that to you. Can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Better? Okay. I have to keep my mouth right here. Got it. Just take a breath. Just for a moment. Feel your feet. Feel your body sitting on the chair. Notice your breath again. Okay? And if there's a moment in the reading where you feel overwhelmed, try that again. Feel your feet. Notice your body sitting in the chair. Tune into your breath. Okay? All right. Whew. Can a 15-year-old virgin puking in the toilet because she's drunk give consent to a 22-year-old man? No. No woman vomiting from intoxication can give consent. To this add my premenstrual stage of development. I was a child on the cusp of blossoming into a young woman. After I was raped, I became sexually promiscuous. It's in all the textbooks, common behavior. But I wasn't reading any of these textbooks. I was just acting out my shame. The die is cast. My body has been defiled. Any notion of innate worthiness, however small, I might have garnered in my childhood innocence has been stolen, cast aside permanently. Dirty laundry that's hopelessly stained. I go with this new flow, engage in intercourse with teenage boys as clueless as I am. Moving through an unconscious cloud, I find myself secretly having sex with one of my sister's girlfriend's boyfriends. We break into my stepfather's small apartment during the day while he is at work, make toast and slice butter off the top of the stick instead of the front. A dead giveaway, I've been there. Marcy, were you at my place yesterday? Yeah, I stopped in for a snack on my way to Binghamton. I lie. While at my stepfather's place, my secret sex partner and I end up in the tub naked, trying out things we heard about or saw in movies, things that are supposed to be sexy. I feel nothing. Nothing in my body, nothing in my mind, nothing in my heart. I am absent from the scene. Some other person has taken over my body and is going through the motions, performing, trying hard to be pleasing, trying hard to be loved and accepted. Isn't this the way? It takes me 30 years to understand what happened to me, 30 years to confront the pain encased in my cells, 30 years to find my voice. Like so many women, I am a survivor of sexual trauma and abuse. Like so many women, this early trauma still has a grasp on many aspects of my life, on many aspects of myself. Like so many women, I still struggle with intimacy and boundaries. Like so many women, things can still get really confusing in my body and my mind. Feel your feet. Notice your body in the chair, and notice your breath. Okay. I was a child who loved to play with my Barbies, ride my bike whenever I could, play make-believe games with my sister and the other neighborhood kids, and tried to keep thoughts of my sexual awakening to when I was alone in my bed at night. I didn't know my parents' marriage was unraveling. I didn't know my mother was in therapy, or that she had begun to scratch the surface of her own painful story of sexual abuse at the hands of her father, an alcoholic and extremely traumatized World War II vet. I didn't know that the gung fu lessons she was taking 3 times a week were giving her the power to leave an unhappy, oppressive marriage. I didn't know until later that my father had also raped my mother when she refused him one night in bed. Our house was infused with Marine Corps strictness. My father, also an extremely traumatized Vietnam vet, was shot through the head 3 months into his deployment and miraculously survived. Proud to have served his country, he bore the deafness in his right ear like a badge of honor. The nightmares and post-traumatic stress were kept very secret. His father, district attorney and later ruthless judge of a large city in upstate New York, had no patience for my father's artistic, sensitive side. He taught him to pull himself up by the bootstraps by sadistically making him dig and refill holes all day in the lawn on his only day off. Any lingering signs of weakness were beaten out of him at the dinner table each night with the belt from my grandfather's waist, while his older brother, younger sister, and mother watched, pretending not to be horrified. I believe my mother was every bit as scared of my father as we were. He carried the law, and his word was gospel. Any divergence from the house rules would find us bending over, grabbing our ankles while he stood behind us as we waited for his heavy hand. When the slap came, I would wet my pants, do a forward roll, and cry, humiliated to the core. My sister, older and closer to my father, weathered it better. Before long, my sister and I became allies against his rageful discipline. One day, when our father took his military stance as he prepared to hit us, we grabbed our ankles, looked at each other, and giggled. He never hit us again. Feel your feet. Sitting in the chair. Notice your breath. Okay. My foot's falling asleep. What I did not yet have the capacity to understand or put into words began to show up as nightmares while I was still awake. My bedroom at the back side of the upstairs of the new house looked out onto a hill where new construction was taking place. Pine trees stood at the edge of where the earth had been churned up. Its loamy smell penetrated my room. In the darkness of the night, I watched the silhouette of the trees. One night they began to move. They walked toward our house, moving ominously toward my bedroom. Most children, when scared at night, run for the comfort of their mother. I did not. I was terrified of my parents' bedroom. Scared I would anger my father, I laid there frozen, petrified, shaking, willing the trees to stop, but they just kept coming. I knew I would be consumed. I closed my eyes and trembled until I fell asleep. I began staring at the ceiling before turning out the lights, focusing my mind on one spot to make it open up. Was I trying to create a safe space to escape into? I believed that if I concentrated hard enough, I could make objects move at my will or even disappear. How else could I stop those trees from coming to get me? At some point, the fear of being devoured by the trees must have been stronger than the fear of disturbing my father at night. I must have told them about the trees because my parents changed my room. My new room was much smaller at the front of the house facing the street. A street lamp kept it partially lit throughout the night, and the trees, now out of sight, disappeared from my consciousness. Fast forward. It is April 2017. I am on my way back from a journey to Mexico, pulled out of work by my doctor for a severe reaction to mold in the classroom at the school where I teach. I headed to one of my favorite healing spots on the planet, Maya Tulum on the Yucatan Peninsula. After a week of relaxation on the white sands of the Riviera Maya, Mayan shamanic healing sessions, and midnight margaritas with new friends, I'm headed home with an immune system reboot. I've made my way to the gate of my connecting flight in Philly. I don't know why I am feeling so tired. I've just had the time of my life in Tulum. I am fully rested, tan, radiant, renewed. I'm walking the long walk to Terminal F where I will catch my puddle jumper home to Ithaca. All along the way, there are signs for ground transport. I stoically ignore them all. I will walk, I confirmed to myself. The exercise will do me good. As I approach Terminal F, I marvel at the weariness in my legs. Why am I so exhausted? By the time I arrive at my gate, I can't wait to sit down. My backpack, I realize, is loaded with everything that would no longer fit in my carry-on, which is now crammed with Talavera-style hand-painted Mexican pottery. It slowly dawns on me that I've been carrying 52 pounds of ceramics on my back and pushing everything I brought to Mexico for more than a mile. No wonder I'm tired, I think to myself. This old pattern of determination and self-discipline handed down the ranks, perhaps from even further back than my father's father, a long outdated family trait, kicks me to the curb sometimes. We do it to ourselves, I think. Aren't we our own worst enemies? I see this resistant, outmoded pattern loud and clear and smile knowingly at myself. Yet there is something I don't see. Is it just the Talavera in my bag that is weighing me down? My husband, Chris, shifts back and forth, moving in and out of my sight. I see him as I roll my carry-on down the ramp of our small Ithaca airport. He's wearing the rust-colored jeans I bought him at the Monoprix on the Champs-Élysées in Paris so many years back. Damn, you look good, I think, as I move through the swinging gate into the center of the tiny Ithaca airport. I recall our first months, years together, when just the sight of him would bring a rush of excitement to my loins. The skin of his face and neck is a shade pinker than his pants, despite the frequent applications of SPF 50 sunscreen he uses dutifully. Full body hug. Soft, familiar, delicious. My hand on his hip, then butt cheek, in the middle of the mostly deserted airport. It is 10:34 p.m. I can feel the steely gaze of the woman seated to our right. I don't care. His hug feels like home, and I sink right into it. You look good, I say as I size him up. I like your pants. We are both beaming. You too, he says. Words stick in his mouth with unrehearsed emotion. He puts on the heavy backpack I've been wearing most of the day on my trek back. What have you got in here, a dead body? I just smile as he pushes my carry-on in front of us. We walk out of the airport hand in hand, greedily stealing mutual glances. And then it happens. He places his hand on my back as we are crossing the road to the parking lot, and my body doesn't want it there. In the car, he places his hand on my knee, and my body doesn't want it there. Shit, I think. Here we go again. Did it have to happen so soon? I gently move my knee away to free it once again, to free myself once again. The easy openness I felt upon first seeing Chris has been swallowed whole, disappeared into a dark and mysterious vortex of history. I long for its return. I long for my own receptivity to his touch, but it is nowhere to be found. It will take some time for me to get back, I say, into the dark hum of the night. I know, he says. When the sacred vessel of our childhood body has been violated, when primal and necessary boundaries have not been honored by those entrusted with our care, when the silent no we scream from within is not heard or heeded, something breaks. Wordless, it reverberates off walls not fully constructed. My foot's really falling asleep. I thought I had done the hard work of learning to love myself, but there is always more. Always another layer to the damn onion. When I started this training, I was not aware of the harm, subtle and less subtle, that I was still perpetuating in my body. I had no way of knowing the hurricane of havoc that would come into my life by allowing so much light into the deepest recesses of my unconscious mind. The patterns in our lives support us, make us feel safe, protect us, help us conserve our energy, help us to get it all done. They're familiar, like old friends you sit with comfortably on the couch. We snuggle up to our patterns, eat popcorn, pull up the cozy fleece blanket, and sink into our patterns. Why would we want to let them go? But some patterns, often those that reside in the deep space in our marrow, in the thick walls of our unconsciousness, in the secrets we hide, even to ourselves, need to go. The quiet no and the quiet yes are both sacred. Both demand deep respect, but they ask for something distinct. The first asks to stop pushing already and start listening. The second asks for a nudge, a gentle push, an invitation to move toward our potential. The body has its own wisdom. At first it speaks so softly as to be easily missed. The regular practice of yoga helps bring this more subtle voice into my awareness. I stumble. I step over, bulldoze through, or ignore the quieter voices there. So deep are these ingrained patterns. But I am learning to be patient with myself in the process. I am learning to move closer and closer to honoring a deeper expression of myself. I bring this evolving practice into my yoga classes and my private practice, invite my yoga students and my clients into this dance of attention to the subtler, softer voices that hold deeper truths. I bring my yoga practice to bed. Let's just breathe together, I say. I make mistake after mistake. Remind myself to move with a light touch. Remind myself that this is a dance, that it's not about getting it right, but about inviting the novel as my cells cry for something deeper, more authentic. I hear you, I say, like the dutiful parent I never felt I had growing up, and I am doing my very best to honor you. There are stories to be told, our stories. Lives of truths and lies, knotted and gnarly, waiting to be carefully, lovingly unwound. Tread lightly, they say. Yours is a sacred art, a yeoman's task, and to do it justice requires great care and kindness, a gentle touch but a fearless probe into the depths of memory and sensation. Hold on, dear peaceful warrior. It will be a bumpy, often chaotic, but ultimately rewarding ride. Buckle up if you wish, but keep the clasp at hand, for you may need to rip it off to dance in the sudden rush of lilies or unsuspected breeze that touches your temples, dries wet tears, and moves wisps of hair from your eyes. The buckle is there to protect, not to confine. You are in charge of the buckle, like Bacchus guards the door of drunkenness and surrender. The underworld awaits. Dead heads float in the sea of Hades. Rotting hands reach up and grab at your leg. Eyes, putrid, spin in morbid orbits, but that deadly sea is also your salvation. Dip your toe in, and then a foot. It will not kill you. It will release you. Someday maybe you may learn to swim freely among the corpses, familiar with their scent. Today, a toe, a finger that lingers at the surface of tumultuous waters. Then write. Give it everything you have. There are stories that want to be told, and they are circling your head. How's everybody? You okay? All right. Got a little more? Okay. Chris and I are taking one of our afternoon walks in the woods that join our land. What a surprise, right? You guys see us out there all the time. All right, so this is just one of those. We have just crossed the Coy Glen stream, heading back toward home. I'm on the lookout for red newts, but it is dry out today, and they are probably staying moist under a rock in the stream bed. Here, a perfect acorn just for you, Chris says, as he stands up and plops an acorn into my hand. I love acorns. The smooth bottom, an impeccable marbled brown French beret each one wears on the top. I turn this one over in my hand and notice a hole just below the bottom ridge of its hat. It's not perfect. It has a hole in it, I say. That's nature for ya. We walk along, stepping over roots jutting up in the well-worn path, and I ponder Chris's words, so full of simple wisdom and truth. This is nature, riddled with imperfections, exceptions, what we might even see as deformities or aberrations, all part of her plan, all just a natural part of life. I can't help wondering, if this acorn were to grow into a tree, would this mark in the original seed show up in its mature form? Would the tree, as it grows, hold the memory of something missing, or would it be able to compensate little by little as it grew? Would this hole cause it to grow a lump at the base of its trunk, have slightly disfigured bark, or would it still be able to grow tall and straight? I notice how few trees stand without some sort of visible imperfection. The forest is filled with trees possessing every sort of oddity you can imagine. The tree that grows straight upward with unmarred bark and branches filled evenly with leaves is hard to come by and far from the norm. Where did we get the idea that our lives or our bodies would grow to full form without all kinds of marks, strange growths, broken bark, and branches that never bear fruit? From where does this unattainable standard of perfection as norm come? What not-so-subtle form of aggression has indoctrinated us? We are relentless with ourselves when we can't measure up. Who, on a walk through the forest, would look upon nature's imperfections, if they even were to see them as such, and think, the forest must be wrong? Why, then, do we do this so ruthlessly to ourselves? Last summer I learned the story of the twin acorns, one gone to seed in the center of a lush pasture with nutrient-rich soil, plenty of space to grow in all-day sunlight, the other to find its place in the craggy slope of an unforgiving rocky mountain pass. The first grows to be enormous, with nothing to slow the spread of its branches or the yearly rings that make its trunk massive and strong. The second has to fight for footing, push up against unforgiving winds that cause its bark to swirl, never to grow to full height. The first may live to be 400 years old. All those who see it marvel at its luminosity and grandeur. The second may live to be 42 if it's lucky, but the struggle against the elements has made it exquisite, original, unique. An experienced woodworker would know how to showcase its unusual patterns and sell anything made of it at top dollar. Having fought for every centimeter of its life, each inch of growth is filled with extraordinary character and presence. No passerby can set her gaze upon either tree and not be humbled by its glory. Each started with an acorn. Each had two very different experiences and created two equally majestic trees. But when the wind dies down, does the tree on the craggy slope know it can rest? That it can let go and soften into the warm rays of the sun? When a great storm comes, does the great oak in the clearing know how to stand its ground? Has it learned to withstand the harshest elements of life? I am flipping to the end now. It's a good ending. According to Peter Levine, the human organism is pre-programmed to heal. Each time the body releases trauma, it restores goodness. While writing this memoir, deeply visiting, allowing, investigating, feeling, and ultimately releasing the stories of trauma still lingering in the shadows of my body, heart, and mind moved me progressively toward wholeness. The work is never done. This pulsation toward wholeness continues. Indeed, it never stops. In Chakra Yoga, Anadea Judit writes, "Awakening is a gradual realization of an integrated wholeness in everything, a deeper access to who you really are, and a persistent presence of grace." How do I know I am healing? I feel it in my increasing capacity to receive my mother's love, in my growing willingness to receive her touch, in my crescent trust in her absolute desire to see me flourish, even when she's still sometimes too caught up in her own challenges to fully see me. I see this healing in the robust way my body seeks intimate contact with my husband, in the way I open more easily to his touch and laugh more frequently at his humor, in the way I give less and less energy to the part of me that sees him as dangerous, a threat, or as someone who wishes to do me harm. I know this healing in the swelling steadiness I find in myself, a steadiness I and others can lean into and glean solace from when times get tough. This healing allows tears of grief to flow more freely from deep within my belly without shame, to more readily embrace little me when she gets angry or sad or feels neglected. This healing moves me toward the available friend, the neighbor who has time to talk, and those who are truly interested and want to listen, even as the part of me that still seeks the approval of those who will never show me love tries to tug me away. I fall, I get up, and I grow into the beauty that being in love brings. Thank you.